50 guests. Deanna Abbott choked on her coffee, staring at her childhood friend in disbelief. You want me to plan an engagement party for 50 people in 3 weeks? Marco laughed, leaning back in his chair at their favorite cafe. I know it's asking a lot, but you're the best event planner in the city. And Vanessa really wants something special. Deanna tucked a strand of auburn hair behind her ear and sighed. As the owner of Memorable Moments, a boutique event planning company she'd built from scratch over the past 5 years, she'd handled far more complex events. But this was personal. Marco had been her friend since college, and she wanted his engagement celebration to be perfect. Fine, she conceded, already mentally scrolling through venue options. But you're giving me complete creative control and I get to bring a +1 to the wedding. Deal, Marco grinned, sliding a check across the table. And don't worry about the budget. Vanessa's parents are covering everything. Diana's eyes widened at the figure. This is generous. They want to impress, he admitted. Vanessa's dad has some business associates attending, which reminds me my best man will be helping with some of the arrangements. He's particular about certain things. Your mysterious friend from business school? Diana raised an eyebrow. Marco had mentioned this friend occasionally. They'd bonded during their MBA program and now worked in the same industry, though Deanna had never met him. Sebastian Grayson. He'll call you tomorrow to coordinate. Just be patient with him, okay? He can be a bit intense. Deanna waved dismissively. I handle demanding clients every day. How bad can he be? The following morning, Deanna was in her office reviewing potential venues when her phone rang. Memorable Moments, Deanna speaking. Miss Abbott, Sebastian Grayson here. Marco gave me your number regarding his engagement party. His voice was deep and commanding, causing Deanna to straighten instinctively. Yes, Mr. Grayson, I was expecting your call. I have some specific requests for the event. Are you available to meet this afternoon? Deanna checked her calendar, which was already packed with client meetings. I can do 4:30. Perfect. The Artemis Hotel Penthouse Lounge. I'll send a car for you. Before Deanna could protest that she could drive herself, he had disconnected. She stared at her phone in disbelief. Well, that was presumptuous, she muttered. At precisely 4:15, her office phone rang and her assistant informed her that a car was waiting. Deanna grabbed her portfolio and headed downstairs, where a sleek black town car idled at the curb. The driver opened the door, and Deanna slid into the buttery leather seat, wondering what kind of man sent luxury transportation for a simple meeting. 20 minutes later, the car pulled up to the Artemis, one of the most exclusive hotels in the city. The doorman greeted her by name, which was disconcerting since she'd never mentioned it, and escorted her to a private elevator that required a keycard to access. Mr. Grayson is expecting you, he said, swiping the card and stepping aside. The elevator ascended swiftly to the top floor, opening directly into a stunning lounge with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A man stood by the windows, his back to her, talking on his phone. He was tall, with broad shoulders accentuated by an impeccably tailored charcoal suit. I don't care what it takes, he was saying, his voice firm but controlled. Get it done by tomorrow or find another firm to handle your investments. He ended the call and turned, and Deanna felt a surprising jolt. Sebastian Grayson was strikingly handsome, with dark hair, penetrating blue eyes, and a strong jawline. He couldn't be more than 35, but carried himself with the confidence of someone who commanded rooms far more important than this one. Miss Abbott, he said, crossing to her with long strides and extending his hand. Thank you for accommodating my schedule. His grip was firm, his gaze direct. Deanna found herself momentarily flustered, which was unusual for her. She dealt with powerful people regularly in her line of work. It's not a problem, Mr. Grayson, she replied, gathering her professional demeanor. Though I typically meet clients at my office. A smile flickered at the corner of his mouth. I'm not technically your client, Marco is. I'm just invested in ensuring everything goes smoothly. He gestured toward a seating area where a silver tea service waited. Shall we discuss the details? Over the next hour, Sebastian outlined his vision for certain aspects of the party. The wine selection, only specific vintages from a vineyard in France. The music, a string quartet for cocktails, transitioning to a specific playlist later, and security protocols that seemed excessive for an engagement party. Is there a reason for this level of security? Deanna asked, making notes. Are celebrities attending I should know about? Sebastian hesitated. Let's just say some of the guests value their privacy. Marco's future father-in-law has business associates who prefer discretion. I see. She didn't, not really, but Diana prided herself on adaptability. And the venue, I was thinking the botanical gardens would be perfect for a spring engagement party. Actually, Sebastian said, I've already secured a location. He slid a folder across the table. The Morrison Estate. It's private, secure, and has accommodations for guests who might need to stay overnight. Deanna opened the folder to find photos of a stunning mansion with expansive gardens overlooking the ocean. This is beautiful, but she paused, recognizing the property. Wait, the Morrison Estate isn't available for events. The owner is famously reclusive and has rejected every request I've ever submitted. Sebastian's expression remained neutral. The owner has made an exception in this case. How did you manage that? Deanna couldn't hide her surprise. Let's just say I can be persuasive. He checked his watch. I have another meeting. My assistant will send you the complete guest list and dietary restrictions by tomorrow morning. I'd like daily progress reports. Deanna bristled slightly. Mr. Grayson, I appreciate your input, but I typically don't provide daily reports even to my actual clients. His eyebrow arched. Is this going to be a problem, Miss Abbott? No, she said, standing and gathering her materials. But I work best when I'm trusted to do my job without micromanagement. For a moment, something that looked like respect flashed in his eyes. Fair enough. Weekly updates then, and you can call me Sebastian. Deanna, she offered in return. As she turned to leave, Sebastian called after her, one more thing. I'd like you to attend the tasting for the catering. Tomorrow, 1 p.m. I'll have the car pick you up. Deanna paused. I can drive myself if you provide the address. The car will be more efficient, he countered smoothly. Unless you're uncomfortable with that arrangement. There was a challenge in his tone that Deanna couldn't ignore. The car is fine. I'll be ready at 12:30. The next day, Deanna found herself seated beside Sebastian in the back of the same town car, heading to a restaurant she didn't recognize. This isn't the catering company I usually work with, she noted, reviewing the menu he'd provided. Chef Renault doesn't typically do private events, Sebastian explained, but he's making an exception. Deanna raised an eyebrow. You seem to get a lot of exceptions made for you. A small smile played on his lips. I find that most things in life are negotiable with the right approach. The restaurant was closed to the public for their tasting, and Chef Renault himself greeted them. Over the next 2 hours, they sampled exquisite dishes while Deanna made notes about presentation and portion sizes. To her surprise, Sebastian had knowledgeable opinions about the food and wine pairings, occasionally deferring to her judgment on what would work best for the event. You seem to know a lot about fine dining, Deanna observed as they shared a dessert sampler. I travel frequently for business, he said simply. Food is one of life's reliable pleasures. And what exactly is your business? She asked, realizing she still didn't know. Sebastian took a sip of water. Investment management primarily, though my company has diverse interests. And how did you and Marco become friends? He's in commercial real estate development, right? Sebastian nodded. We met in our MBA program. Marco has a good eye for promising properties. Very useful in my line of work. Deanna sensed there was more to the story, but didn't press. As they finished the tasting, she couldn't help but notice Sebastian was actually pleasant company when focused on something other than giving orders. He had a dry wit that emerged occasionally, and he listened attentively when she spoke about the technical aspects of event planning. Over the next 2 weeks, Diana found herself spending more time with Sebastian than she'd anticipated. He accompanied her to meetings with florists, insisted on approving the lighting design, and even had opinions about the calligraphy on the place cards. While his involvement could have been irritating, Diana found herself increasingly drawn to his attention to detail and the glimpses of personality beneath his businesslike exterior. During a visit to the Morrison estate to finalize the layout, Sebastian surprised her by producing a picnic basket when they finished their work. "You seemed like you could use a break," he said, spreading a blanket on the lawn overlooking the ocean. "And you mentioned you hadn't eaten today." Diana was touched by the thoughtful gesture. "I'm surprised you remembered that." "I pay attention," he said simply, unpacking sandwiches and a bottle of wine. As they ate, Diana found herself relaxing. "So tell me something about yourself that isn't business-related," she ventured. "What does Sebastian Grayson do for fun?" He looked momentarily thrown by the question. "Fun, I sail when I can, I collect first editions, I travel." Alone, his expression became guarded. "Usually, it's simpler that way." "Sounds lonely," Diana said without thinking. Sebastian's gaze met hers, unexpectedly vulnerable. "I suppose it can be. What about you?" "All work and no play," Diana smiled. "I have friends, I hike. I'm learning to paint badly, and I read mystery novels in the bath until the water gets cold." The image made him laugh, a genuine sound that transformed his face. "Now that I would like to see." The moment stretched between them, charged with something Diana wasn't ready to name. Sebastian cleared his throat and looked away first. "We should get back to the city." "You mentioned you have another client meeting this afternoon." The drive back was quieter, both of them seemingly lost in thought. When the car stopped at her office, Sebastian walked her to the door. "I'll be out of town for a few days on business," he said. "But I'd like to review everything when I return, perhaps dinner, to discuss the final arrangements." Diana knew this was crossing a line from professional to personal, but found herself nodding. "That would be fine." "Good," he said softly. "I'll call you." After Sebastian left for his business trip, Diana threw herself into finalizing the engagement party details. She was surprised to realize how much she missed their daily interactions, his challenging questions, his unexpected insights, even his occasionally imperious manner. 3 days before the event, Diana was at the florist selecting centerpieces when her phone rang. "The meeting ran long, but I'm back in town," Sebastian said without preamble. "Are you free tonight?" Diana glanced at her watch. "I can be after 7. I'll pick you up at your apartment." "Wear something nice." She rolled her eyes at his commanding tone but found herself smiling. "You don't know where I live." "I'll figure it out," he said, and she could hear the smile in his voice before he hung up. That evening, Diana chose a midnight blue dress that hugged her curves and left her shoulders bare. At precisely 7 p.m., her doorbell rang. Sebastian stood there in a tailored suit, holding a small gift box. "How did you know where I live?" she asked, accepting the box. "I asked Marco," he admitted. "Open it." Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a small charm, a tiny calendar page. Diana looked up, confused. "It's the date we met," Sebastian explained, looking almost shy. "I thought, well, it seemed fitting." The gesture was surprisingly sentimental from a man who presented himself as all business. "It's beautiful," Diana said softly. "Thank you." Sebastian helped her put it on, his fingers lingering on her wrist. "The reservation is at Oriole. I hope that's acceptable." Oriole was the most exclusive restaurant in the city, with a months-long waiting list. "How did you get a reservation on such short notice?" Diana asked as they rode in his car. Sebastian's eyes crinkled. "Another exception. The evening was magical." Their table overlooked the city lights, the food was exquisite, and conversation flowed easily. Sebastian told her about growing up as the son of a factory worker, working his way through college and business school, and making his first investment that paid off unexpectedly well. "And now?" Diana asked, curious about how he'd become successful enough to command such influence. Sebastian hesitated. Now I manage a private investment fund. We identify promising companies, help them grow, sometimes acquire them entirely. Sounds lucrative, Deanna observed. It can be, he admitted. But the work is what matters, building something valuable. Is that why you're so invested in Marco's engagement party, building something valuable for your friend? Sebastian's expression softened. Marco stood by me when I was nobody. When my first major deal almost fell through, he loaned me money he couldn't afford to lose. I never forget loyalty like that. As dinner ended, neither seemed ready for the evening to end. There's a place nearby with excellent jazz, Sebastian suggested, if you're interested. The jazz club was intimate and darkly lit. As they sipped cocktails and listened to the soulful music, Sebastian's hand found hers on the table. The simple contact sent electricity through her. When the band played a slower number, he led her to the small dance floor, pulling her close as they swayed to the music. I should tell you something, he murmured near her ear. This isn't just about the party anymore, not for me. Deanna looked up at him, his face inches from hers. It isn't for me either. He leaned down, his lips meeting hers in a gentle kiss that quickly deepened. Deanna felt herself melting into him, all the tension of the past weeks transforming into something much more potent. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Sebastian rested his forehead against hers. I've been wanting to do that since the day we met. Even when I was arguing with you about the table settings, she teased. Especially then, he admitted with a grin. You're the first person in a long time who doesn't just tell me what I want to hear. Later, as they stood outside her apartment door, Sebastian kissed her again, slowly and thoroughly. I should go, he said reluctantly. We both have early meetings tomorrow. Deanna nodded, though part of her wanted to invite him in. I'll see you at the final walkthrough tomorrow afternoon. I'll be there, he promised, brushing her hair back from her face with gentle fingers. Sweet dreams, Deanna. The day before the engagement party was chaotic, as such days always were. Deanna barely had time to think about her evolving relationship with Sebastian as she confirmed deliveries, finalized seating charts, and dealt with last-minute changes from the bride's mother. When they finally met at the estate for the final inspection, Sebastian seemed distracted, fielding constant phone calls and speaking in terse, hushed tones. Is everything okay? Deanna asked after he ended a particularly tense call. Just a business situation that needs handling, he said, his expression tight. Everything looks perfect here, you've done an amazing job. But, Deanna sensed there was more. Sebastian sighed. I may be slightly late to the party tomorrow. There's an issue with a company we're acquiring that requires my personal attention. Deanna felt a flicker of disappointment but kept her professional demeanor. As long as you're there for the toast. Marco would be crushed if his best man missed that. Sebastian's expression softened and he pulled her into a quiet corner. Last night was special to me, he said quietly. I want you to know that. Me too, she admitted. He kissed her quickly. I have to go, but I'll see you tomorrow. Save me a dance, absolutely. The day of the engagement party dawned clear and perfect. Deanna arrived at the estate 6 hours early to oversee setup, barely taking a moment to breathe as she directed florists, caterers, and the lighting crew. By the time guests began arriving, everything was flawless. Garden lights twinkled in the trees, champagne flowed freely, and the string quartet played softly as elegantly dressed guests mingled on the terrace. Marco found her checking the gift table. This is beyond incredible, he said, hugging her tightly. Vanessa is over the moon. Deanna smiled, genuinely pleased. That's what matters. Where's your best man? I haven't seen him arrive. Marco's expression turned apologetic. Sebastian called. He's still tied up with some massive deal but promised to be here for the toast. Deanna nodded, ignoring the twinge of disappointment. The toast isn't for another hour. I'm sure he'll make it. As the party progressed, Deanna found herself watching the entrance, hoping to catch a glimpse of Sebastian's tall figure. The evening was a success by every measure. The food was divine, the speeches heartfelt, the atmosphere magical, but Sebastian's absence left her feeling oddly hollow. Finally, just as Marco was preparing to offer his toast to his fiancée, Sebastian appeared. He looked spectacular in his tuxedo, though slightly harried as he made his way directly to Marco, clapping him on the shoulder with a whispered apology. When it was Sebastian's turn to speak, he raised his glass and addressed the crowd. "I've known Marco since we were broke students sharing terrible coffee and big dreams. I knew he'd found something special when he couldn't stop talking about Vanessa after their first date." He smiled at the couple. "To my oldest friend and his beautiful fiancée, may your partnership bring you joy, strength, and prosperity for all the years to come." The crowd applauded, and Diana felt a surge of warmth as Sebastian's eyes found hers across the room. He made his way to her side, taking her hand discreetly. "I'm sorry I'm late," he murmured. "The acquisition was more complicated than anticipated." "Is everything resolved now?" she asked, a smile spread across his face. "Completely. In fact, it's the reason I need to speak with you." Diana raised an eyebrow. "Can it wait until after the party?" "I'm technically still working." "Of course," Sebastian agreed, though he seemed barely able to contain his excitement. "But save the last dance for me." As promised, when the party was winding down and most guests had departed, Sebastian found Diana supervising the cleanup. "Everything is under control," he assured her, taking her hand. "Come walk with me." He led her through the gardens to a secluded gazebo overlooking the ocean, where a bottle of champagne waited in an ice bucket. "Are we celebrating something?" Diana asked, amused. "We are," Sebastian confirmed, popping the cork and filling 2 glasses. "To a successful event, and to the most extraordinary woman I've ever met." Diana blushed, taking a sip. "Thank you for all your help with the party, even if you were annoyingly particular about everything." Sebastian laughed. "I prefer detail-oriented." He set down his glass, suddenly serious. "There's something I need to tell you, Diana, something I should have mentioned earlier." Her stomach clenched. "That sounds ominous." "It's not, I promise." He took a deep breath. "The business that kept me away today, I was finalizing the acquisition of the Morrison estate." Diana blinked in surprise. "You bought this place?" "Why?" "Several reasons," Sebastian said, taking her hands. "It's an excellent investment property. And the owner was only willing to host this event if I made a serious offer." "Wait." Diana's mind was racing. "You purchased an entire estate just so Marco could have his engagement party here?" Sebastian looked slightly embarrassed. "When you put it that way, it sounds excessive." "Because it is excessive," Diana said, incredulous. "Who does something like that?" "Someone with the means to do something special for a friend," Sebastian said quietly. "And someone who wanted to impress the event planner he couldn't stop thinking about from the moment they met." Diana stared at him. "Just how wealthy are you, Sebastian?" He looked uncomfortable. "My investment firm has been very successful. The media occasionally uses terms like billionaire, though that's not entirely accurate once you account for assets under management versus personal holdings." Diana's head spun. "You're a billionaire, and you never thought to mention this. Would it have mattered?" he asked, suddenly vulnerable. "Most people treat me differently when they know. I wanted you to see me, not my bank account." Diana took a moment to absorb this revelation. It explained so much: the car service, the immediate access to impossible reservations, the way people deferred to him. "It doesn't change how I feel about you," she said finally. "But I wish you'd trusted me with the truth sooner." Relief washed over his face. "I'm sorry, I should have." He stepped closer, taking her face gently in his hands. "The thing is, Diana, I've fallen in love with you. Your determination, your creativity, your refusal to be intimidated by me. You see me as a person, not a resource or an opportunity. That's rare in my world." Diana's heart hammered in her chest. "You love me, completely," he said simply. "I know it's fast, but when you know, and I've never been more certain of anything." Diana smiled slowly. "Well, I suppose that's convenient because I've fallen in love with you too." Bossy attitude and all. Sebastian laughed, pulling her into his arms and kissing her deeply. When they finally broke apart, he whispered against her lips, "Move in with me." Deanna pulled back, startled. "That's definitely too fast." "You're right," he conceded. "How about we start with dinner tomorrow night? And the night after that? I want to build something real with you, Deanna, something that matters more than any business deal or property acquisition." "I'd like that," she said softly. "Though I should warn you, I don't give my clients preferential treatment just because I'm dating them." Sebastian's eyes sparkled with amusement. "I wouldn't dream of asking for special treatment, though I do have some thoughts about the Morrison estate's potential as a wedding venue." Deanna raised an eyebrow. "For Marco and Vanessa's wedding?" "Eventually," Sebastian said, his expression turning serious as he caressed her cheek. "But I was thinking more along the lines of our wedding when you're ready." Deanna's breath caught. "That's very presumptuous, Mr. Grayson." "I prefer optimistic," he corrected, pulling her close again. "And I can be very patient when something is worth waiting for." Under a canopy of stars with the sound of waves in the distance, Deanna wrapped her arms around Sebastian's neck. "In that case, keep the estate. It might come in handy someday." 1 year later, the Morrison estate hosted another celebration. This time, Deanna Abbott became Deanna Grayson in a sunset ceremony overlooking the ocean. Marco served as Sebastian's best man, joking in his speech about how his engagement party had inadvertently created a love story even more romantic than his own. As Deanna and Sebastian shared their first dance as husband and wife, he whispered in her ear, "Best investment I ever made." Deanna smiled up at him. "The estate?" "No," Sebastian said, his eyes filled with love. "Hiring the most stubborn event planner in the city to organize my best friend's party," Deanna laughed. "For a billionaire business genius, you got quite a bargain." "I certainly did," he agreed, spinning her under the twinkling lights. "And I plan to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret it." And as the night unfolded around them, surrounded by friends and family in the place where their story began, Deanna knew with absolute certainty that some things were worth far more than any fortune, and she had found the richest love of all.